Um, so hey everybody, I'm Ashley Cash. As Jamila mentioned, I'm a six-figure resume writer, interview and salary negotiation expert. Typically, I serve clients who are in the career or corporate space, but the crux or the core of my work is really to help people do three things. That is, tell their story, communicate their value, and confidently ask for what they are worth. So whether that is you and you're in a corporate space or you're an entrepreneur, which today is Entrepreneur Edition, you're going to learn something all about the art of negotiating and how you can navigate that with a little bit more confidence to help you and your business. But before we jump into all that, I don't know about you guys, but I'm all about a vibe, right? I like positive energy, high energy, even when we're virtual. So I'm going to ask you guys to do me a favor, and that is type in the chat something that has brought you joy lately. It could be big or small, but let's just get some positive energy going. I want to know is one thing that has brought you joy lately. So type that in the chat. And while you guys are typing in the chat, I will share one thing that has brought me joy lately, and that is this cooler weather, which, seems like a real like cliche thing to talk about, but it's been hot. So I've been appreciating the cooler mornings and the cooler evenings to where I can go out in the backyard and play with my little girl. So that's been really nice. Jasmine says she has started her career at the deck. Oh my gosh, that's awesome. Well, congratulations, Jasmine. We're glad to have you. Demetra says she's been going for walks. Yes, this weather is finally good for us to be able to do that. That's awesome. Simple things, right? Oh, I love it. I love it. Okay, well, let's get this party started. Let's start talking a little bit about navigating negotiations. So, I want to start off. I think it's really important, especially for us as entrepreneurs, to really start with our why, right? When we're talking about our businesses, when we're talking about ourselves, whether you have a product-based business or a service-based business, I think it's really important for us to know our why, like why we're doing this. And so I'm going to share one of many whys with you guys. But I get asked a lot about like, how did you get into this work? What made you start, teaching people about negotiations? And a big part of it is, for me, and we know all the stats as a woman of color, we know that Black women earn 61 cents for every dollar their white male counterparts make. We know that there is also a revenue gap in Black-owned businesses. And so for me, a big part of that was, there is so much sacrifice in our success, right? We think about the time, the energy, the effort, the grind that it takes to start and run a business, or even if you're in corporate, to go to a job every day, just the sacrifice that it takes to do that. Because it's like, if you're working on your business, or if you're at your retail location, if you're, at a trade show or a pop-up, that's time that you're not with your family, right? That's time that you're not spending on self-care. There's sacrifice there. And there is so much sacrifice in our success that we deserve, and I mean deserve, to earn what we're worth, right? Like, we shouldn't have to sacrifice all these things to run and have a business and then not make enough money to make ends meet, or better yet, to live a great lifestyle and provide for our families. So my why is really rooted around all that sacrifice and making sure that our sacrifice bears fruit. And so for me, not only do I want that for myself, but I want that for you. I want that for other entrepreneurs to be able to really earn what they're worth. So that's a little bit about why I do what I do. And the other thing, how I got started, especially around this whole like earning what you're worth, I would find, and maybe you agree, type in the chat if this is you, that people would come to me with questions or problems, and I would have no problem whatsoever being like, no, you could be charging more for that, or, helping them with an idea. But it seemed like I could do it for other people, but not for myself, right? Like I would find myself, shrinking, like questioning, am I charging too much? Am I silly to charge my friends and family for my services, right? And I just kind of had to be like, Ashley, stop. You are worth it. And I had to really get comfortable and unlearn some things that I had learned about money in my entrepreneurial journey so that I could price myself right, that I could feel good about telling someone my price, so that I could be okay with not, trying to be the least expensive person in my field. In fact, my pricing, I'm probably on the higher end. And I had to learn to be okay with that because I know that I super serve my clients. I know that my clients get results. I know that my clients, after working with me, have gotten jobs with companies like Facebook and Amazon and Nike, JP Morgan Chase. I mean, you name it. So I know what the value that I bring to the table. And so I had to unlearn feeling guilty or weird or funny about about earning what I was truly worth. And so I share that with you, which is probably a little different than what you're expecting in a negotiation workshop, but I share that with anyone who has struggled with that or struggles with that from a pricing standpoint, from a giving more than you're getting standpoint. I just want to give you a little bit of encouragement that there is a little bit of mindset work that kind of has to come with that too. So it's not just the tactics and strategies that we're going to talk about. Some of it, you have to kind of unlearn some of the things that you know or you thought you knew about money. So I talked already a little bit about this, but going from feeling weird about talking about money, feeling weird about being on maybe the higher end of some of my competitors, I just kept saying to myself, Ashley, you're always telling other people how great they are. You're always affirming other folks. It's time to affirm yourself. And so I want to actually share with you 3 of my money affirmations, if you will, and then we'll get into the actual negotiation tactics. So normally, and Jamila was kind of asking me about this earlier, normally when I do this presentation, I'm live, I'm there with you or with the audience, and I normally have you stand up, put your hand over your heart, and we go through these affirmations together. Well, you may be at home, you may be at work, you may be in your car, so I'm not going to have you stand up, but I will ask you to read these out loud if you can, even if it's a whisper. And these are 3 affirmations that truly have helped me just get more comfortable with asking for and earning what I'm worth. So the first one is, my time and talent have value. So if that's you and you agree with that, can you just type in the chat for me, value? Value, yes. Awesome, I love that. The second thing, or the second affirmation, and I affirm this to myself all the time, is I deserve to be compensated fairly for the value I bring to the table. So if you believe that about yourself and your business, I want you to type fairly in the chat. I deserve to be compensated fairly for the value I bring to the table. Awesome. I love that. And then the last thing, and this one was a big one for me because sometimes, especially when I was new to business, I would be afraid that, if someone was coming to me either as like a one-on-one client or an organization was approaching me to speak or, do a workshop for them, if my price was too high, like that I would lose the business, right? I was always afraid that I don't want to overshoot it because I really want this opportunity. And the third and final affirmation that I came up with was that opportunity awaits me and abundance overwhelms me. And what I mean by that is I don't have to worry about chasing down opportunities or lowering my price or my fees in the name of opportunity. And so if you believe that, if you want to cultivate a mindset of abundance and opportunity, I want you to type in the chat, opportunity and abundance. And you guys can totally screenshot this. I know Jamila said she's going to send this presentation out afterwards, but if you like these, I definitely recommend that you, affirm these to yourself anytime you feel nervous about money. These are some great ones that have helped me. If you have some affirmations that you like better, feel free to use those. But for me, this helps me to cultivate a money mindset. Mary says, yeah. Okay, so let's get to it. So when I first met Jamila, I was telling her, I was like, I bring a little bit of, a little woo-woo to my presentations. And so we got past that part. Let's get to why you're here. And let's talk about the rules of negotiation. And the first part, especially for entrepreneurs, is preparation. So before we get into that, I just want to, have a good sort of understanding of who all is here. So if you would, for me, type in the chat the type of business that you have, right? So if you're a service provider or you sell a product, tell me in the chat your business. I want to know what it is. And if you're feeling froggy, drop your website in there so we can support you. But let me know in the chat who I'm talking to. Okay, so Darius does consulting. Okay, cool. Okay, so you and I are similar industry. Okay, so Mary, I hope I'm saying there is, I don't know if it's Mary or Marie. Feel free to correct me. But Mary also does consulting. Awesome. Okay, great. I don't know if there's a slight lag. Oh, okay. So Francisco does marriage counseling. Very cool. So service-based, although you could have some products too. Okay, let's see what else comes across. Okay, so while we're waiting for a few more folks to chime in with the type of business that they have, let's talk about the rules of negotiation. And the first one is preparation. And there's a couple things that as you prepare your mind and get ready to negotiate, something that you need to keep in mind is like Mario. Okay, Mari. Okay, thank you. That negotiation is just a conversation. And I know some of you guys are like, what? Like, if it's just a combo, why do I feel nervous about it? Why does it feel like this is such a big deal? But I want you to sort of take some of that nervousness away by thinking of it like, this is an exchange of information as a means to get to a point of agreement, right? And that's what a conversation is, right? Like, they're going to give information, you're going to give information. They're going to ask questions, you're going to ask questions. That is what a negotiation is. And so if you think about it in that context, that helps sort of take away some of the nerves. The second thing that you want to think about as you start to prepare is good vibes, right? And I told y'all that at the beginning, I'm all about good energy, but both parties should walk away feeling good about the transaction, right? Negotiation is not this person wins and the other person loses. No, it is everybody should walk away from that feeling like, whoo, I'm really happy about this partnership. Whoo, I feel really good about what we agreed upon. The third thing as you prepare, kind of get your mind right to negotiate is there is no such thing as an upper hand. Now tell me in the chat and be honest, I'll raise my hand. Especially, in corporate settings, I have felt that way. I felt like, the person who had the money was the one who had the upper hand, but that's not true. Now, tell me in the chat if you've ever felt that way. If I'm the only one, I'll be by my lonesome, but there is no upper hand. Are there leverage points in any negotiation? Absolutely. Each side has leverage points that they can sort of say, hey, this is what I'm bringing to the table. This is why I'm asking for this. Each side have that, but just because the person is writing the check or paying the money doesn't mean that they have the upper hand. And let me illustrate that a little bit further for you. So I have been natural for a couple years now, and there's only one person that I trust to cut my hair. I've been going to her for years, right? But you would think, oh, okay, so in this situation, right, I'm the customer, I'm the one that's paying. you could think, oh, I have the upper hand. The customer's always right. Not so. And the reason why is because, yes, I'm that paying customer, but Siri, my hairstylist, she has something I need. And those are her skills. So if Siri decided that she was going to go out of business, she was no longer going to cut hair, it doesn't matter that I have money that I'm willing to pay her. If those services are no longer available, or she, God forbid, broke her arm and wasn't able to do hair anymore, I'm at a loss, right? So in that transaction, I have something to give and she has something to gain, and vice versa, right? Siri has something to give and I have something to gain. So we are equal in that transaction. So if you have ever felt, and no one put in the chat that they felt this way, but if you have ever felt like, hey, the person writing the check has the upper hand, not true. Equal value. Both parties bring equal value to the table. And so you can always remember that hairstylist analogy. We're bringing the same value to the table. Okay, so what happens when we break those preparation rules? And if any of these you can relate to, just type yes in the chat. So when we don't think about negotiations in the context that I just talked about, it being a conversation, that there's no upper hand, that everybody should feel good about leaving the transaction. When we break those rules, this is what happens. We do things for free. Raise his hand. We accept lowball offers, either salary, raise his hand. We accept terms that don't benefit us or our businesses. Hands raised. Others benefit from our gifts and talents more than we do, right? And nothing about that has good vibes written over it, right? It doesn't make you feel good about putting your gifts and talents out into the world. It doesn't make you feel good about the sacrifices that come with running a business. Am I right or am I right? If you've ever felt like that, don't leave me hanging, let me know. So that is why it's so important. And I've spent so much time kind of harping on just sort of that preparation stage and that mindset stage, because these are real things. And if you are running a business or trying to get a business off the ground and you don't sort of already ready your mind, understanding these things, when you're doing things for free or you're not earning what you're worth, that leads to burnout. It leads to resentment. It takes the things, the gift or the talent or the business that you were so passionate about, and it perverts it, right? You're like, I don't want to do this. Every time, I go to sell a service, I, am not earning what I feel like is fair. I'm losing out on the deal, and I don't want to do this anymore. But I want us to have thriving, successful businesses, and that's why I'm talking about this. Okay. So we talked already all about how negotiations are a conversation. They are, you can even look at it like a choreographed dance. They are not a wrestling match. And I covered this already, right? It is not, okay, let me just body slam somebody and steamroll them into submission. It's much more gentle than that. So we already kind of talked about feeling undervalued and unappreciated and frustrated when we break those rules. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to end that today. No more. And I'm going to show you how you can effectively negotiate for yourself, for your business, without feeling weird about it. So let's talk about the next thing, which is positioning. Now, there are 4 things that you want to keep in mind as you prepare to negotiate your business or your salary. And in case any of you are not in your business full time, these rules apply to your corporate career as well. But the first thing is you want to understand from a positioning standpoint, market value. It is the value of something in the marketplace. And that is the basis for your ask. It's not what you think you should charge. It's not how much money you want to be paid. It is the basis for which the market will pay, right? It's just like if you were going to go to the grocery store to buy milk, there's a reason that from store to store, a gallon of milk costs, around $3 or $4, right? That is market value. That's what milk costs, $3 to $4. Now, you might go one place and it'd be a little bit higher. You may go another and it'd be little bit lower, but plus or minus, right? We're in the same range. Now, if you're not sure about what market value is for either your like corporate job or your business, there's a couple things that you can do. You can do market search. So on the screen, I have some places that you can go and look up places to learn about a salary. But if you're a business owner, you can do competitor analysis. You can go on other folks' website and figure out kind of the high, mid, low. If you have friends in the industry, like I know Darius said he's in a consulting. I think Mari said she was too. I don't know specifically what type, but if you have other friends in that space, it's completely okay to ask them, hey, what do you charge? What does that service offering look like? And then once you figure that out, you can figure out, okay, is my pricing on the high, mid, or low end? Or do I maybe have all three price points that, I want to have an offering at? I mentioned a little bit earlier, my pricing is a bit on the higher end for some of my peers in this space, but I'm okay with that because my clients get great results. I tend to work with high earners. And so for them, the return on their investment makes sense. And they get a high level of service. The second thing that you want to think about, especially as an entrepreneur, this is so important, is you want to make sure that you have a clear definition of opportunity. So you guys remember earlier, I was kind of talking about how, when I first started out, I was just so like afraid that I was going to miss an opportunity or that one wouldn't come around again. So, I would kind of accept anything, just do whatever. Well, the first thing is to determine, is this a good opportunity? And if it is, why am I defining it that way? If I'm defining this as a good opportunity only because I don't feel like I have anything else going on, maybe we need to really kind of redefine that, right? It's really about, how does this help me? How does this serve me? Now, I don't want to give away too much, but Jamila and I did have a little conversation about this whole thing around doing stuff for exposure. And we're not going to get into that today, but if you see another conversation happening about that, don't be surprised. But one of the things that you can also think about is, again, when you're defining opportunity, you can also think about that in terms of pricing, right? So if you are in negotiations, let's say, like with Darius, he's a consultant and organization, he might have a rate, but he might also have some flexibility within that rate. So you can think about that as, when I look at my rate and I think about opportunities that align with what I want and where my business to be, when I think about opportunities to partner with organizations that are important to me, you can sort of look at your range from the viewpoint of like a delighted, meaning like, if I can get this number, I'm going to be delighted. The desired, right? That's kind of that midpoint where it's like, okay, I have flexibility on my rate. I can take this amount. And then deal breaker, where you're like, you know what? I cannot do anything for less than this amount. And that's only if you have flexibility within your rates. If you are a product-based entrepreneur, right, you're going to look at that as sort of your margin, right? How much wiggle room do I have? And then anything that, cuts into your margin to where you're not making any money, okay, I can't go lower than that. And that's the exact same way that you approach a negotiation. You know your numbers, you know what you need to make based on market, and you only pursue the opportunities that closely match your definition of an opportunity. So if you just do that, you don't have to worry about accepting things that don't pay you what you're worth, or you do an event or something like that, and you end up coming out to the negative, right? You won't ever do that again, because you'll know what's worthwhile and you'll know what you need to ask for and what you need to earn. The next thing you need to think about as you think about positioning and really negotiating with someone, this is a contract or even a client, is you want to always start from a place of what is most important to them, not what's most important to you. Because if you do that, you can position yourself to sort of say, okay, I'm going to make a play to help them get what they want. And if they get what they want, I have a much better chance of getting what I want, right? So think about, what do they want most? So if you were negotiating, let's say, a potential contract with an organization, we'll say that, with an organization, right? And the thing that they want, after you do some listening, you ask some good questions, right? You might find out that they are trying to put together a leadership development curriculum and program. And they really, rather than just want maybe, let's say, a singular workshop, they really want someone that can come in and work with their teams once a month, right? And you only know that because you're asking questions. Well, what are you hoping your attendees walk away from this program with? What's been a success of something like this in the past, right? You want to ask questions and really get to the core of what it is that they want. And then from there, you sort of leverage that and say, well, hey, I can deliver on that. And in order to do that, here's my rate, or here's what I'm asking for. I'm asking for a 1-year contract, or I'm asking to have, I don't know, your recommendation or an introduction to another organization. I want to spot on your board. I mean, whatever it is that you're looking for, but you definitely are coming from a place of leverage when you know and understand what's important to them. And if you ever run into situations where someone's like, oh, well, I just don't have the budget, or your price is too high, understanding what's most important to them and asking questions like, well, what happens if we don't do this? What will you do? How much is it going to cost you to hire someone else to do it? How much is it going to cost you if you don't do it at all? So there are just lots of good questions that you can ask to really deep dive and understand their need, and then leverage that at the negotiation table. And then the fourth and final thing, as we talk about positioning, is it's so important to show value, right? Arnanda mentioned understanding their needs helps accelerate the process. Absolutely. I think oftentimes as entrepreneurs, we kind of want to go in and sort of say, I'm the best in the business. I do this. My process is that. I use the best products. I'm the fastest. I'm the smartest. I'm the only one that can do it this way. We try to use all these things to sort of differentiate us before we really understand what's important to the customer, right? Because if we know what's most important to them, that's what we speak to, right? They may not care that you're the fastest. That may not be most important to them. They may have an unlimited time frame. What may be most important to them could be something like they want someone who's really personal, or they want someone who's got experience with a certain customer segment, but you don't know what to lead with or talk about if you don't ask questions. So that's why I really harp on that. And then the next thing is, once you uncover that need or understand what's most important to them, what their desired result is, then that's where you show value, right? So that an example I just gave, if you are working with a potential client, either like in a one-to-one service or partnering with a brand or an organization, and they say something like, we're really looking for a consultant who has a lot of experience working with women entrepreneurs, right? That's just an example I'm throwing out there. Well, now here's your opportunity to prove it to them and show value. So you can do things like talk about other projects that you've worked on or other clients. You can talk about testimonials or show them testimonials. If it's appropriate, pictures or videos from that last consultant engagement that you did. But you can really talk about, hey, frame it up for them. Well, I actually had a client that was focused on women entrepreneurs, and here's what we did, and here's what the results were. That's how you show value. And if you can, even better, if you can talk to them in their language and say, hey, you mentioned to me that, your women entrepreneur group, they haven't had this, that, or the other. And that's important to you. So I've done this before. Here's what I can do. Here's why you should hire me to do it. But you want to start with showing value based on their needs first. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about, you've gotten past the point of sort of that negotiation piece, and they've made you an offer. They say to you, okay, we accept your proposal, or we want to do business with you. Here's some important things to think about as you're thinking about either countering, right? It's think long-term. Don't be thinking about this as like, oh, I just want to get this one deal, this one transaction. Think about, again, you're going to know this from the conversations you had around needs. How can I build a relationship beyond this single transaction, this single contract? So you want to make sure that as you're approaching your negotiations, as you're approaching your counter offer, you're keeping that in mind, that like, I don't want to be, like I showed you in that gift a second ago, I don't want to approach this like a bull in a china shop, because I want to be able to do business with these people ongoing. I want to be able to turn this deal into an even longer deal. So you want to definitely make sure that you're thinking about the long-term relationship. The other thing is, if you are nervous, if being on the phone and trying to negotiate a deal and going back and forth makes you so nervous, I always say you can be a keyboard killer and get the terms in writing, take a moment to review, and then let them know that you'll contact them via email. And so you can then start to do some of your negotiation via email. This doesn't always work. Some people, want to obviously have a phone conversation to talk it out. But for my folks who just can't get over the nerves, this is a strategy that I use every now and again. The bigger the deal, though, I do tend to want to have more of a conversation just so that I can hear all the nuances. So I will make sure that that like if this is a really big deal, a really big project, you might want to have the phone conversation and then follow it up with an email to sort of just recap. But if it's a little bit on a smaller scale, if it's just sort of like a one-to-one client, you can absolutely talk about that via email. The other thing is, think about all up front. And what I mean by that is if you are presenting sort of a counter or you're negotiating, you want to make sure that everything that you're asking for, you do it up front. So as an entrepreneur, I'm going to keep talking about, if you get the opportunity, let's say, to partner with an organization and maybe the rate or their budget is on the lower end of your scale, or maybe you decided to do it pro bono, think about, what can I ask for? What can I leverage to make this opportunity worthwhile? So some of the things I like to ask for are things like, let me have the emails of all the participants, right? Because I know that if I can add these people to my email list, I can cultivate a relationship with them later on and potentially convert them into clients. Another thing that I like to ask for if I'm doing something pro bono is I will be specific about, hey, will you do some special social media promotions for me? Some other things are things like I might negotiate a giveaway where we do some maybe more sponsored content. But it's just thinking about, what is it that I can ask for, especially when a budget maybe isn't, at the top end of my rate. What can I ask for to make it worthwhile? Sometimes I'll even ask for stuff like, you book me for a follow-up, or you make an introduction to me to, someone that I know they know, or something like that. Or maybe I'll even ask for like, hey, would you do a video testimonial for me? So there's all kinds of things, even if you're doing something pro bono, like let's say you're just getting your business started, or it's a big organization or a big client that you really want to be affiliated with. There are things that you can ask for in that negotiation, but just make sure you ask for it up front. Arnanda said marketing space on their website. Absolutely. You could even put together a little special offer and say, would you, as a part of this sort of pro bono work, would you send out an email to your list? So let's just say, only 100 people sign up for my event, but they have 1,000 people on their email list. Well, you could ask them to send out an offer for you to their entire email list, even those that didn't sign up or attend, the event. So there are all kinds of things that you can leverage, even as you work your way up to maybe more pricing, or as you work with organizations who, again, may not have a great budget, but if you deem it like, wow, this is a great opportunity, and to even add more value for myself, those are some things that you can ask for. And I'll tell you, I do that all the time. I got an invitation to partner with AT&T, and it was a big brand. And, for me, again, thinking long-term, I wanted to think about a long-term relationship. I wanted to think about leveraging that relationship for other opportunities, right? Because sometimes big organizations are like, oh, she worked with AT&T. That gives you a little bit of street cred. And so I didn't say this. They didn't have a budget for this specific thing, right? And I was like, you know what? That's okay, because there are so many other things that I can ask for in sort of the negotiations that I can leverage that are probably better than just my fee. Now, I don't do that all the time. And in some instances, I partner with organizations of that size, and I have a fee and I have additional asks, like all the things that we talked about. So it's really important. I showed you a few slides ago about really thinking about or clearly defining what opportunity looks like. What is most important to you at this stage of the business? Is it partnering with a big organization to give yourself some street cred for other asks that you're planning? You know what I mean? What would it mean for your business to have a testimonial from, AT&T, right? Or to put that on your website, or a video testimonial from someone from a big organization like that, right? That could be leveraged and used to get even bigger contracts, even though you might have done that one thing pro bono. So I'm not sitting here sort of advocating pro bono work. I'm advocating strategic pro bono work. I'm advocating putting together counter offers or whatever in your negotiation that you're thinking about long term, right? You're thinking about what is it that I need most to help grow my business. So I gave the example of an email offer. It could be that, it could be something different. But you got to just be really aware and conscious of what is it that I need and how do I package that up in an ask. Okay, so let's talk about closing the deal. So we've gotten through the nerves, we've gotten through the mindset, we've gotten through positioning and showing value, and now it's time to close the deal. So the number one rule, if you learn nothing else from our time together today, the number one rule is once you present a counter offer or a package or however you want to frame that, say it and zip it. Like zip it. And the reason why you want to say it and then zip it is because you want to give the other person time to consider it, to process it, to just not break their train of thought. And it may feel awkward. You may want to jump in and sort of be like, oh, here's my number, here's my counter, blah, blah, blah. And then if they're quiet, you want to jump in and say something like, but I could be flexible, right? You just want them to hurry up and get to the yes. But if you do that, you disturb they might be thinking of a question. They might be thinking of a way to make it even better. Just give them a second to process all the information and get comfortable with the silence. Second thing is you want to be thinking about alternative options, right? You want to think about the end goal, not necessarily the route. And I'll use an example. I have had clients like partnering with brands and organizations to where, from a budget standpoint, maybe we weren't in agreement. And so we looked at it in some different ways. So I said, well, if you don't have the budget, depending on the brand, right? It's like, well, let's max out the budget that you have. And then to sort of make up the gap, maybe you will give me a certain number of product or you'll sponsor some giveaways up to a certain amount of money that I can give away to the audience, right? Or it's something that I can sort of bring people to the event with, gift cards or services or whatever sponsored by you, right? So it's like we end up getting to the same amount, but maybe in a different way. And that's a great way to sort of involve my audience and show value to my audience and not just the organization that I'm partnering with. So there are lots of different ways that you can sort of say like, hey, and I'm just gonna throw this number. If your number is 10,000 and they only have a budget of 5,000, you can say, okay, well, do $5,000 of donations or gift cards or whatever, so that I can engage my audience. And that's a $10,000 package, but maybe it's just packaged up in a different way. So you want to be thinking creatively of how can I get to what I want? How can I give them what they want? And how can I position that in a way that they want to say yes to? So like in that example, if they were to say, well, we don't have $10,000 budgeted for, a speaker or consultant, we have $5,000. And I say, well, I tell you what, you talk to me a lot about wanting to engage with this particular audience more. Let's take $5,000 and spend that in, again, services, gift cards, whatever. Let's do some giveaways to get an even bigger draw. We'll put that towards our marketing budget. And now we're going to get even more people, to come to this event. And so a lot of times companies or clients will bite on that because it's a win-win for them. And they will appreciate that you are creatively solutioning the deal, right? It's about helping them get to that yes. And that's where you can get creative. All right. The next thing you can do, especially if you guys are super far apart on the number or the deal, and you just feel like we're going back and forth, we're not getting anywhere, don't be afraid to pause the conversation and just sort of say, you know what, let me take some time and think about, what you're saying. I want to invite you to take some time and think about what I've been saying. And why don't we pick this up in a day or two? That basically just says, again, we're going to pause. That gives you some opportunity to really get creative or think about your ask. And it takes a little bit of pressure off. Sometimes in negotiations, it's like if you've ever been to an auction and everybody's just like raising their hand, like, and the next thing you know, you're like, whoa, I've overpaid, right? Because you just kind of get worked up in the moment. And taking that pause is just enough of an interruption for everyone to sort of get their faculties about them and then try again, right? It's kind of like, okay, let me just take a break. Let me catch my breath and try it again. And then the last thing I want to leave with you is if you just can't agree, there is so much power in your no. And I mean that for partnering with clients or organizations, or if you're looking at corporate job opportunities, it is okay as an entrepreneur to say no. No, I can't do that if you aren't able to meet me, on these terms. No, I can't come down on my pricing if you can't afford it, or, it's outside of your budget. It's okay to say no. In fact, I have learned to actually kind of get a kick out of it sometime. It makes me feel good when I'm able to say no, I know my worth, I know my value, and I don't have to do everything that somebody throws at me. And I had a client that was kind of wanting to negotiate on some rates that are clearly published on my website. And I was kind of like, hey, I get it. I'm happy to refer you to someone else if you and I kind of can't agree, but my rates are kind of what they are. And I didn't feel bad about it. I wasn't snotty about it, but it's okay to stand up for yourself. No one can make you do anything. And I don't want anyone to, again, deliver a service or a product and you feel resentful afterwards. So there is unlimited opportunity. Just because someone maybe doesn't see the value or feels like they can't afford it or whatnot, if you're priced right, based on market value, based on client success, it's okay to say no to things that want to pull you back. Okay. All right. So this last thing is about just some quick rules about things don't ever do. So this is particularly for folks negotiating salaries. But if some of us are kind of in that 9 to 5, 5 to 9 realm, make sure that you don't reveal your salary up front. Now, this is not the same as being an entrepreneur and sort of revealing your rates up front. I tend to approach revealing my rates. It depends on the conversation. I will always lead with what's your budget, right? So very similar to the note here about not revealing your salary up front. It's really about understanding, again, what the budget is, because you might have a set rate, but you might also be able to scale the ask based on their budget. So in negotiations, the person that throws up the number first, that's called anchoring. So I'm not saying you need to hide or be ashamed of it or try to hold your rates close to your chest. What I am saying is have an idea of the client's budget so that you can then either scale the project up or down based on the budget. The other thing is don't say yes right away. You don't want to make an emotional decision. Take some time to carefully consider the offer, the time frame, right? How much time am I going to be, doing this? What are some other components? How much resources do I need to spend towards this? Really think about the offer in its entirety before you just say yes. Don't ever apologize for asking. Negotiations are an expectation. There is nothing to feel sorry about. There's nothing to feel weird about. If someone is coming to you wanting to do business with you, they're more than likely expecting to have a negotiation. They're expecting for money to come up. And then don't forget to practice. Say your number or your rates out loud. Get comfortable saying them. And then if you don't get the opportunity to negotiate all the time, you can also practice in everyday life, things like speaking up. I always joke around and say, I started like joking around and practicing getting my nerve up to negotiate by going to the nail shop. Like if I didn't like something, I feel like in the past, I'd be like, oh, I don't really like this, but I don't want to ask them to do it over. And so I started just getting my nerve up to kind of speak up and say, oh, that doesn't work for me, or I don't really like how you did that. And it helped with negotiations, believe it or not. But you could do things like call your student loan company and see if you can negotiate a better rate. You could call your mortgage company and see what programs they offer. You could call your cable or cell phone company and, again, attempt to negotiate a better package or a better rate. Or even when you're out shopping, you guys, I have negotiated hardwood floors, paint, I mean, you name it. Like we were doing new flooring in our house and the lumber we selected was like a closeout. And we were like, hey, if we buy all of this and clear it out, would you give us 25% off? And the guy was like, yeah, because he was like, I do need to get this out of here. Like, if you're saying you'll take all of it today, sure. And sure enough, we bought flooring for 25% off. And, you know, it takes nerve to look somebody in the eye and do it. But the worst thing that can happen is they say no. But I've like learned to not be shaken by the no in everyday practice. So when it comes to negotiating for myself or my business, I don't necessarily feel those butterfly anymore. Darius, I love how you put that, those fear busting exercises, especially like if you're doing it over the phone with your cable or cell phone company, right? You can get real brave with them. They're on the phone. So anyway, those are just some things that have helped me that I utilize in my business day in and day out, and just ways that I can negotiate every day to kind of always keep me in practice of asking and advocating for myself and making sure I'm getting the very best deal. All right, so I want to open it up for questions. I'm not sure if you guys have the ability to like unmute and ask live, but if you do, feel free to do so. And if you don't, feel free to type your questions in the chat and I'd love to answer. Thank you, Darius. Before you hop off, put your LinkedIn in the chat for us if you've got time. That way we can connect with you. Okay. As you guys put your questions in the chat, I have one more thing. I have a favor. So I have some really cool news. So I found out recently that I'm a finalist for a business grant. And they are asking everyone to vote on their favorite. So I actually need a favor. I'm going to put the link in the chat, but would you take 30 seconds and vote for me so that I can earn this business grant to help expand my services, to help more people get hired and get paid? I'm going to throw that in there. So literally it's like a 1 second link or a 1 second click. But I would really appreciate it if you would do that. Thank you, Jasmine, for doing that. At first, I was like, and see, listen, this is why you have to practice negotiating or asking for what you want. Because I literally found out about this morning and I was like, I'm not going to ask these people to vote for me. And then I thought, well, if you do not ask, you will not get, right? And so, I mean, I do this all the time where I'm always practicing negotiating, but even I still get, nervous. So, you have to ask. So if you would, I would really appreciate it. Thank you, Jasmine. And I'm just waiting now for questions so that I can answer them and continue to add value for you guys. Thank you, Demetra. That's really sweet. I appreciate it. All right, so we'll give you guys a few more minutes. I will, I guess, turn it back over to Jamila while we wait. Oh, okay, so Mari actually has a question. Sorry, Jamila, just kidding. Mari says, how do you not come across as being too assertive when conducting negotiations? Oh, listen, as a woman of color, I feel like we get that all the time, right? Like, how do we even saw that like in the most recent presidential debate where it's like, How do we assert ourselves and speak up for ourselves, but not come across as too assertive or like turn people off? Oh, I just put the link back in the chat. Maybe I copy pasted it wrong. Sorry. And I think one of the things that I do, Mari, is I am really, really good at, no, it's not just you. I'm really good at asking questions and again, leading with like their needs. So I find myself more so kind of approaching it like, hey, here's what I heard, right? What you said to me was, Mari, remind me of your business again. That way I can maybe try to make it a little bit more. Okay, so Mari's a consultant. And so Mari, who are the clients that you typically serve? What kind of consulting do you do? And if you know some needs that you commonly get or why people commonly kind of come to you, tell me in the chat real quick what people typically come to you for in terms of your consulting business. Okay, so HR consulting. And within HR consulting, what kind of services do you provide or what topics? Okay, so I might have a little delay. I'm just waiting for Mari to tell me her topics when she's doing consulting in her HR consulting business. So while she's doing that, like one of the things is you can approach it and go to them and, if they've engaged you or you've engaged them, you can say, okay, so recruiting, benefit admin. Okay, so I'm going to pick on recruiting, right? It's probably the easy one, right? And you go to a company or they come to you and they say, Mari, we are having a hard time recruiting diverse candidates, for diverse talent, right? That seems to be a hot topic right now. And, 90% of our employee base is non-diverse talent, and we're really trying to figure that out. And you say, yeah, I have a solution for you. I can help you with that. And you do some more discovery, understanding, what the gaps are, blah, blah, blah. And then you get to the part about the rate, and you don't want to come across too assertive. And what you do is you position the rate in a couple ways. One, you talk about results that you've gotten for other clients, right? Especially if you can talk about, firms with maybe similar goals or something like that. You talk about the results, you talk about the time frame. And then if they start pushing back on the rate, I go back to asking a question. Okay, it's like, well, what have you tried in the past? How has that worked? What happens if we don't solve this problem, right? So I tend to, you try to use questioning and also their language or their problem to sort of pull those levers to agree on a rate. The other thing is if they are sort of price sensitive, I will say, well, I'll tell you what, we both recognize that you have a problem that needs to be solved. We both have some alignment that my solution is the one to help solve it. But if you're price sensitive or you don't have budget, why don't we scale the project to meet your budget, right? We could do a small proof of concept to see if this makes sense. And then we'll revisit it after the proof of concept. So use questioning, use their words, use their needs sort of back at them, sort of mirror those. And that is typically how I come across without being too assertive. But I will tell a client, I will scale a project up or down to meet a budget. But the rate remains sort of the same. So that is how I typically navigate that. And most of the time, people get that. They'll take me up on maybe scaling it down. I hope that was helpful. Oh, and thank you guys for resharing that link. Sorry. I don't know why that wasn't working. Okay, any other questions? That was a fantastic one. And then Mari, too, just to add while we're waiting for other questions, if you have folks who, like you said, are mostly startup without an HR department and you've worked with other startups, I would, a lot of times I'll say to clients, oh my gosh, I've worked with startups and this is, they've had the same apprehension. But here's what they said afterward, right? And you show testimonials, and you can even ask for startup clients to say, hey, in your testimonial, talk about the apprehension before and then talk about the results after, And if you can share those with clients, to sort of say, hey, I get it, but I've had clients in your same shoes and here's what they had to say, those can be really convincing too. And thank you for voting. All right, I'll give you guys maybe another minute or so to see if we have any other questions come up. And then Jamila's going to come on, looks like, and give us our final charge. And thank y'all for voting. That was so sweet of y'all. Okay, well, Jamila, I'm going to turn it over to you.
All right, good deal. Looks like we don't have any other questions. So thank you guys for tuning in. I hope you got a lot of information out of Ashley's deep dive into navigating negotiations. Thank you again, Ashley, for taking part in talking to our network. And we greatly appreciate your work, as always, in being a long-term partner with the DEC network overall. So if there are nothing else, no comments, questions, concerns in the chat, email if you have anything concerning programming or resources in the DEC network. I'm dropping my email address in the chat now. And you guys enjoy the rest of your Wednesday. We're always here. Tune in. We got more coming. Thank you guys. See you later.